Right, I'm getting to the end of my F650GS stripped down, pretty much there. I've taken all the wiring out, now I've just got the engine left, which is coming out soon. I'm just going to inspect the water pump, because when I drained out the system there seemed to be oil in it. Now there's like a white kind of substance, which I don't know if it's obvious on here, it was a minute ago. It's hard to say. But it's like a white creamy substance that came out. Now I don't think, from draining the engine, there was no water in the oil, which is good, because otherwise that would be really bad for the engine. So it's probably coming from the engine side out through the seals or the shaft. Now this bike looks like this has never been taken off before. It's very crusty, and at 31,000 miles I would expect there to be a requirement probably to replace the shaft and the seals, but just gonna have a look and see what I find in there, and then I'll show you what's there. I'm just taking it off at the moment, and just got one last bolt to undo. How do I do this one-handed without dropping it all? Right. So there you go. Look, that does look a bit slimy in there. So I suspect the oil is coming through from the engine side into the into here. So in order to get this shaft and everything off, we've got to crack the clutch cover off as well, which I'll probably save till I've taken the engine off, but I just wanted to kind of confirm that there was something going on in here. So it's definitely, I mean, that's very suspicious. Also in the radiator, and when I drained it out there was kind of a white creamy substance, so definitely looks like there's some oil getting in from the engine, and we will investigate further. Right, so once you get the clutch cover off, which entails also removing the oil, there's an oil pipe that comes up and then is bolted on underneath the engine. So remove the banjo for that and then maneuver the oil pipe out. You can then also remove the clutch release arm. You can then get to the back of the water pump impeller driver. And on a 2004 model, this is a plastic sprocket that clips onto a pin. So you should just be able to gently lever it off. There you go. So it's just got this pin, which obviously you don't lose because that's how you hold it on. And there's, which I just dropped, and there's also a washer. So I take that off. I'm just going to slide out this impeller arm. Now, one thing that I do notice when it is installed, there is quite a lot of movement. I don't know how easy it is to see on the camera, but there is a bit of movement there. So at least, I'd say that at least the seals are going to need replacing. So if we get it out, have a look here, get it out, see, and inspect it. So it doesn't actually look particularly terribly worn, except the bike has done 30,000 miles. But so it's hard to feel it necessarily close on. I mean, there's somewhere on here you can see it, but it's not crazy. I've seen them when they're really worn out, so it might just be the seals that need replacing, which have gone a bit, I mean, the most wear really is at this top position here where there is scoring. It is hard to see, isn't it? There you go. So there's some scoring on there, but the rest of it, I mean, there's a mark where it's been rotating, but it's not crazy. It doesn't feel like it's got any indentations in it. When you run your thumb across it, it's not clicking or anything. A little bit here at the top. So I'm just going to have a look at what it looks like installed. The impeller doesn't sit right on top of the seal, otherwise it would scrape along on the sides, on the wall of the casing. But I mean, so there is definitely movement there. So I think what I'll do, I'm going to pop out these seals and have a little inspect of them, and I suspect that they're what is causing ingress of oil into the coolant. So how easy it is to just lever these out. Okay, so that's just a like an old broken screwdriver to pry that out. So I'm going to have a see. You can see the like the milky stuff in that. There you go. So there's something leaking somewhere. Yeah, there's definitely some milky stuff in here, and then there's a lower one that will also just pry out. Just do it gently so you don't damage the casing. Try not to scrape up the side. Take a note of the way they are. So inside, that was pointing towards the oil, and that was pointing out towards the coolant. Let's give this a clean and a wipe just to make sure. Can't see any specific damage. So without the seal, you probably get more movement, but let's have a little look. Yeah, these are just very, very loose fitting. So I think the problem is here is that they're just worn out. Look, there's a lot of movement in that, so they're just getting to the end of their lives. And I'm going to say for 30,000 miles, nothing looks particularly bad. They're just very loose. So I think what would benefit here is maybe, I'll have a think about it. I may replace, because here I suppose where it's failing, it's letting oil in on this sort of shiny bit. So I'm going to have a think about whether or not to replace the whole thing. So I'm assuming that it kind of sits on the seal right there, so where the scored bit is. So it might well be worth replacing the whole thing. Slight shame, because the rest of it is not particularly worn, which is a little bit of a pain. I guess on a note, if you're going to be rebuilding the bike, which I'm doing, this is all going to get sort of stripped off and sanded down, and then a nice coat of silver paint of some description. I suppose if you are stripping down the bike, which I've basically done, it's worth investing in a new shaft, impeller shaft, and it's probably best just to start from scratch again, just because why do it? Why not do it when the whole bike is sort of taken apart? It's probably the easiest way to do it. The other thing I will do as well is the gearbox selector shaft oil seal as well. So I'm just going to replace that at the same time. They're only a few pounds. This is more expensive on this side because if you buy the shaft, it's like 40 odd quid. It's just a bit more expensive, but again, you know, what's 40 quid in terms of having to take this off and on? The gaskets cost like £15, so it's kind of like you still got to take the gasket off if it fails again. So you've got to pay for the cost of the gasket again if you rebuild it, and also the cost of the impeller. There you go. And the other thing I will just check as well is this little hole that you have on the bottom, which should vent out anything that's sort of khaki in there, or is getting in there. So I don't know how thick that hole is. So that's showing signs of a sort of blob of greasy gunk. Where is it? Just a blob of greasy gunk came out there when I took that off. So I poked a hole through it, but it does look generally clear. I think it was probably just weeping a bit of rubbish, a bit of nasty stuff out of it. Clean that out properly. I'll spray some what do you call it, brake cleaner through that. That'll clean it out. So I expect that's been weeping over time. And there you go. We'll have a nice restored part shortly that's sanded down, degreased, and given a nice coat of silver paint. It is pretty crusty, but then what do you expect on a bike that looks like it's probably lived outside most of its life, so it's not doing too bad. It's none of the integrity's gone. It's just done that thing that aluminium does, which is corrodes. Most bikes do it, but this is one of the worst things, one of the worst ones I've seen in terms of actually owning bikes. But then I bought an older bike, which is 20 years old, so it's had a long time to sit in the damp and get corroded. And you don't know how much they've ridden it in the winter and how much salt has gone to it as well, which is also going to be a bit of a killer for aluminium. Right, there you go.